Hey, people. I hope you're all doing well. Boy, some construction's going on over here. But I hope it won't interfere too much with us. Okay. Lots of dogs. A cat, a guy, another cat. Yeah, they've got some strange ideas. Reminders about how to do well in the class. And we're going to talk about supply and demand. More about supply and demand, things to do, including an article that I found very interesting about Gap and Benetton, videos, etc. Okay. Big ideas, movements along the supply curve where output and price change, or output changes in response to price because the demand curve has moved. Movements when the supply curve moves in because cost of production changes, the price of inputs changes, and then there's a change in quantity produced along the demand curve. And if you analyze the change in price and quantity, you may have a clue as to which is happening. Change in supply or change in demand. Okay, talk about that. Movements along the supply curve, price and quantities change because the demand curve has moved. People want more at any price or less at any price. Movements along the supply curve because the demand, movements along the demand curve because the supply curve has changed. Producers will produce more at any price or less at any price. When producers are willing to produce more at any price, you move down the demand curve. People say, hey, if it's worth that much, then what the hell, I'll buy some more. Even though I don't care that much about it, if it's that cheap, okay. Or if the supply curve has shifted up, technology's deteriorated, the cost of production has gone up, then people say, well, I'm only going to buy this much because I have to move up my marginal utility curve. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Red Sox win the World Series. Everybody wants to go. People are willing to pay more for tickets. They build more new seats. These were expensive seats. They didn't build them before because they couldn't sell them at a high enough price. But when demand goes up, you move up your supply curve. Isn't it great? Economics can actually be useful and interesting to understand what people are doing. If you can charge higher prices, then you start looking, well, where can we put some more seats? Changes in demand and movements along the supply curve. So demand changes, you're moving up the supply curve or down the supply curve. Move up the supply curve. Hey, if people are willing to pay this much, I'll build more expensive seats. I'll make more expensive stuff. If people aren't willing, then if you're moving down this way at those lower prices, I'm not going to make so much stuff. I'm going to only produce things at a lower cost. Okay, supply curves move more or less as supply to any price. Why? Simple. I mean, this is how economics can be cool. It's like you can break it down. There are only a couple things to go in here. Price of inputs, higher cost inputs, lower cost inputs, changing in productivity because you have some new technology. Or maybe you forgot the old technology, like after the fall of the Roman Empire. Some manufacturing techniques in pottery and shipping, which is forgotten. Or you couldn't use the older, better technology because you had to put more armed soldiers on every merchant ship because of piracy. So everything became more expensive. And then when they developed convoy systems, when the Viennese in the 15th century started convoying merchant ships, the merchant ships could carry more stuff at a lower cost. That was an example of the division of labor, by the way. You separated the the military function of fighting off pirates from the mercantile function of carrying stuff. Okay. Businesses profit by getting there first. You come up with the better stuff, you can actually charge really high prices and get away with it. Apple too. The first home computer, they made a lot of money. Then they coasted for a while. Anyway. Others will then figure it out. And they'll usually start competing, doing what you were doing. Walmart pioneered better inventory management and use of container shipping, an idea that they got from the US Armed Forces, who developed container shipping going across the Pacific to supply the US military in Vietnam. And that's why, for those interested in such things, the Pacific Ocean traffic used container shipping 10 years before the Atlantic, because the Army and the Navy had built up the container shipyards for handling container ships in Long Beach, California, Honolulu, and Manila. Okay, using a new technology others haven't figured out, they'll catch up. Robots in Toyota factories, better labor relations is a form of better technology. You get your workers to work harder and better. Customer interface, the one-click button that for a while Amazon had, and then they found that they had stolen it from somebody and they had to call it something else. Okay, I'll just catch up. Moving supply curves, raising and lowering wages, for example. Higher wages, you're shifting your supply curve down. Higher wages, up. On the other hand, you start producing in countries with lower wages, down, supply curve shifts out. When the supply curve shifts out, prices go down and consumers will buy more, finding, hey, what the hell, I didn't like the stuff all that much, but you know what, it's so cheap. Or when wages go up, they say, hey, I really like it, but I'm going to cut back because I really need some, but I don't need that much. Changing technology, exactly the same thing. Better technology, hey, what the hell? I don't really need a cell phone, but I'll get one anyway because they're cheap. Or in the other direction, gasoline goes up in price. You know what? I liked driving around, but I think I'll take the bus. Poor technology. Bangladesh workers making shirts and blouses and skirts for the Limited and other companies, Forever 21. The building collapsed and they died. New York's Triangle Fire. Again, young women mostly died because of the exits opened in, not out. So doors opened in. People crowded around the doors. They couldn't get the doors open. They all burned. 200 or so jumped out of the World Trade Center on September 11th. Old technology, new technology. Okay. Remember, in the long run, marginal productivity falls for everything. And supply curves slope down, not up. And ways to scale another way. The US is investing, the US government's investing $400 billion in chip manufacture to re-establish chip manufacture, computer chip manufacture in this country. Because we import the chips used in pretty much everything. And with supply chain troubles and China closing down with COVID and everything, it's been a major mess. economies to scale in production. You need big factories for chips. The Viennese, not Viennese, Venetians, Venice figured this out. And the largest manufacturing facility, production facility in Europe in the until the 19th century was the Venetian Arsenal. Over 1,000 workers. Different people would be doing the different tasks. Somebody would be working the tar, somebody would be working on the cannonballs, somebody would be working on putting the cannons onto the wooden things that would roll around. Different people would be making the sails, assembling the sails. You get a little sense of this in this picture from the 18th century of the Venetian Arsenal. And here it is today, it's still being used, although not for making warships and giant merchant ships, now pleasure boats. Efficient heat transfer is a major factor. In steel, in oil refinery, in chemical processes, you heat things up a lot and you get a lot of waste heat. On the other hand, if you've got a bigger barrel to put stuff in, then the heat stays useful. Eventually, you have some heat left over that you dump in the ocean, killing the fish and all sorts of bad things. But if you are doing this more efficiently, then at least you'll be doing less of the dumping. So that's a good thing. Large facilities, detailed division of labor. You can control the workers better. Yeah, so you're taking advantage of heat transfer, you're taking advantage of division of labor, and also you get, like this guy over here. His job is to tighten a bolt. The cars roll off the line, you notice a bolt is loose, you know who did it. So you can order him around more effectively. Clear responsibility. Oops, wrong way. Okay, economy of scale and teaching too. What the hell, you have me? I can teach 200 students, I can teach 100 students. My first lecture class in 1982 at Tufts University, I taught 200 students. At UMass, I've taught as many as 800. Doesn't make any difference. Might as well teach every microeconomics student. I've said this, they should all be in one class, taught by me, taught by somebody, but just put everybody in one. What's the difference? 400 students, 800 students, you don't have individual attention between the professor and the student. That happens in the TA sections, but it's not going to happen in a large class. Scale economies promote monopoly. The auto industry, India is very concentrated. Look at that. Maruti Suzuki has 50% of the Indian auto market. Okay. Okay, efficiency comes to practice, learning by doing. This is the Willow Run airplane factory run by Ford Motor Company, the world's biggest building. I'm not sure if it's still the biggest building, but it was torn down. But I don't know if anything big was ever built. And here's the Liberty ships. This is why we beat the Nazis, because we were able to build so many ships that we could. Without that, we couldn't have supported our armies in Europe and the Pacific. It all depended on the Liberty ships. Okay, long run, short and long run. In the short run, yeah, some things are limited. In the long run, costs fall. Why do they keep calling us? Okay, we'll get to it when we get to it. Okay. In the long run, though, marginal costs don't rise because you can increase everything and you benefit from economies to scale, learning by doing, greater division of labor. Okay, in case you missed it, because this is upward sloping marginal cost curves, the basis of upward sloping supply curves, which is the basis of the supply curve intersecting the demand curve at a point of equilibrium. If you don't have the upward sloping supply curve, you don't have the standard neoclassical orthodox economic equilibrium of supply and demand. In fact, you don't. The whole system falls apart because it doesn't make any sense. That's okay. It does in the short run. It could make sense in the short run. So we'll just go with it for now. In the long run, price is going to depend on the cost of production. And you have that downward sloping supply curve, downward sloping cost curve. Demand increases, prices fall. Isn't that cool? Okay. And demand curves slope up, which we talked about earlier. Life is strange. Okay. Back to the orthodox equilibrium. Market changes and equilibrium. If you have an upward sloping supply curve and a downward sloping demand curve, you would start out at A. From A, you could find you'd be moving to B, C, D, or E, in terms that A has price and quantity. B has a different price and quantity. So one day you notice, hey, things have changed. What happened? You moved from A to B. Prices went up and people are buying more. How could that have happened? What could cause prices to go up and quantity demanded, quantity purchased to go up? Or why would people buy more at higher prices? What could happen? Cocaine markets during the quarantine period of COVID. It's demand. Demand has to change. If supply increased, then you'd be buying more at lower prices. If supply decreased, if things became more expensive, then you'd have higher prices and people would be buying less. No, it has to be that demand went up. So if that's the situation, you notice closing the border to reduce supply, that's not going to help. You have to focus on demand. What if you go from A to C? Prices go up and people are buying less. Is it demand? If demand fell, then people would buy less, yeah, but at lower prices. If demand increased, as we just saw with cocaine, higher prices, more demand, more consumption. Supply reduced. This is what's happened with the Russian oil, the cutbacks in Russian oil supply. Prices go up, and then how do people respond? They drive less. It's exactly what's going on in the United States and Europe. People are using less fossil fuels, less oil, less gas, because prices are higher. Okay. Going from A to D, lower prices, but people still don't buy the stuff. No one wants the crap. They figured out that VHS sucks, that GM cars aren't very good. Demand has gone down. Go from A to E. Prices fall and people buy more. Why are they buying more? Prices are lower. Is this an increase in demand? No. Increase in demand would be up to here with cocaine. Reduced supply, that would be up to here. Higher prices, less quantity. Reduced demand, lower prices, yeah, but less quantity. You have supply shifts out. Open the borders, let the immigrants in, and everybody will be able to have a garden. Produce more wind energy, electricity prices will fall, and people will use more electricity. Okay, takeaway ideas. Movements along the supply curve, where changes in demand elicit more or less output. or movements of the supply curve. Movements along the supply curve, where movements along the demand curve when the supply curve moves. Over time, prices have been falling prices, more consumption. So over time, the supply curves have been shifting out, and we've been buying more and more stuff, except for VHS cassettes. Okay. This is one of the more fun uses of neoclassical economics, I think. And I hope you enjoyed it. Go out into the world and notice things and start thinking to yourself, is it supply, is it demand? And you may find that this is actually sometimes a little bit useful and certainly fun. I hope you feel that way. Bye-bye.